Hello, dear Prince Claus friends. I'm Brigitte Baptiste, speaking from Colombia. I've been honored by the institution with one of the recognitions in the past, and I'm very happy to really participate into this 25th celebration. In 25 años, I'm saying in Spanish, in 25 years, there's plenty of things that has happened, particularly to me as a transgender person here in Colombia. 25 years ago, nobody spoke about being transgender openly, and gender issues were almost related or restricted to the condition of being gay and struggling for the rights of gay people. Gay parenting, gay marriage were not allowed in Colombia, and the diversity of gender expressions were really running underground. And why I'm telling this to you? Because the evolution of gender perspectives in the world and in Colombia and in Latin America has changed hugely, has changed a lot, and this has helped sexual diversity to express openly and to participate into the daily lives of our communities. And still, there's lots of debate and controversial approaches to gender diversity, but the law is protecting us, and we become full citizens with full recognition of our rights. And this has helped, in many cases, to move a bit from the defense, from the struggles related to gender, to other issues as important as gender, of course, and to allow our participation in the social life and political life of the country, such as environmental issues. And 25 years ago, environmental issues were also very different. We were talking about the implementation of the first Rio de Janeiro treaty, which tried to regulate the climate change by 1992. You remember that? And the Biodiversity Convention as well, trying to regulate and to stop the destruction of biodiversity. So plenty of things are happening in the international arena. And here in Colombia, and that's why I want to talk a bit more, we were able to mix and to put in touch kind of both discussions. How gender diversity, sexual diversity, ethnical diversity, and all the diversities are linked to biological diversity and to the need to acknowledge the role of diversities. So I will talk to you in 3-4 sections about how do we praise the wonders of diversity, but still are not being able to live as diverse people in very diverse countries or very diverse territories. And this has a strong effect on how do we build our identities in the 21st century, because we value and struggle for our identities, but also we feel threatened by others. All the migration issues in every country, all the racism and the discrimination are still part of our lives, and unfortunately are issues that are growing in many places, and we are still talking about building walls between countries, which is absolutely unacceptable in those times. On the other hand, we also appreciate and promote innovation. So we are very happy to go ahead in times to figure out how it's going to be our life in the future with new technologies, new ways of organizing ourselves, new ways of expressing our identities. But we are a bit afraid of too much change. And while talking about environmental change or crisis, we need to foresee lots of change in our daily lives and in our identities, because we won't be the same. And here, I think we can talk a bit in relation to this process. And finally, and not of least importance, we are striving for a world which lots of justice. We need to improve the equity in the world, the access of justice for everybody. And this is part of the environmental crisis, but also is part of the social crisis. And after the COVID, of course, we understand lots or much more than previously to the pandemics. So we need to understand this need for justice and equity, but still we are reluctant to share our privilege, which means that we have a kind of a debate between ourselves on how much leave to the others, how much open up discussions, how much open up spaces, how much improve the condition, our identities, our places of discussion. So 25 years, plenty of challenges, plenty of proposals, plenty of experiments, where we are creating diversity, which sometimes is even more disturbing than just accepting that diversity is something given, that nature is diverse, that culture is diverse. But how can we understand those diversities if they don't have a common history? So natural diversities, cultural diversities are linked through evolution, and they keep moving ahead through the next century, through the future. Some people is pessimistic, some people is more optimistic, but we are here to think what kind of diversities will help us to remain in this planet and to remain producing well-being and taking care of the damage we have done in the past, because we now are responsible for ourselves and the whole Earth. So let's talk a bit about diversities and how important are those diversities for adaptation. Adaptation, because the world is becoming totally different. There's some people that says that there's no planet B to make a comparison and to see how humanity has behaved in the past centuries. And they are right, but also it is right that this planet nowadays is completely different than the planet we used to be, and the planet that gave birth to humanity. So we need to think again, how are we populating this planet? How are we living in this planet? And what are the new ecological scenarios that we have built in the planet? And I think that we are on the task of reinterpreting the place of humans in this changed planet. If we have expelled nature from many places of the world, we have changed the way nature expressed itself We have displaced wildlife, we have destroyed forests and polluted the oceans, and we are threatening all environments, is because we are trying to get some well-being from this transformation. And this transformation has been happening during the last thousands of years, and it's difficult to go back even if we have the consciousness and even if we are thinking on recovering the quality, the living quality of the planet, even if we are talking about a future nature positive, which is the way the CBD, the Convention of Biological Diversity, is talking to foster all human activities in terms of reconstructing biodiversity, reconstructing the capacity of the planet to sustain us all. But when I mean us, I mean not just humans, but all species. In this world, we will be different. I already mentioned that. We will be having different responsibilities, and we will express ourselves in a very different way, which means that everything will be reshuffled. Everything is really shaked, and disruption will happen more and more frequently. And we are afraid of those shifts. We are trying to avoid those shifts. And even if we want to become a better society, if we want to embrace ecological justice, if we want to recover endangered species or to recover the climate equilibrium under 1.5 degrees, even if we want to do that, we don't know very well what does it mean. So we are talking about new balances, transitions, landscapes and societies in transition, which means that our bodies, our places, our habitat is becoming more and more changed, and we don't know where is this change heading. Of course, if we keep doing the same, we know that we are doomed, but there's plenty of other options. So this environmental crisis brings us new perspectives to understand and act over inequity and over environmental degradation, especially in underdeveloped countries. But the concept of underdeveloped is also changing, because we don't want to go the same pathway than other countries have gone. So we are start thinking on how to deal with the ecological collapse under principles and guidelines of environmental justice, linking scales, local scales, regional, national scales, global scales, because we know that diversity is everywhere. Diversity is produced by the scale. There's a huge amount of difference everywhere, but then when we assemble a view of the globe, we understand how difficult is this conversation among diverse people, diverse histories, diverse environments, even diverse values and perspectives. Therefore, what we are facing nowadays is a quest for a new identity in a new planet. So, diversities are part of our adaptive strategies. We need diversity, but also we produce diversity as the way to face the challenges that lay ahead of us. This means that the idea of nature is also unstable, that this strong notion that there's something behind us telling how to behave, how to do things, is not as fixed and determined as many people would like to see. And I am saying this because nature is becoming a buzzword, a very powerful word and concept for people to deal with environmental crisis. everybody is talking about coming back to nature, behaving more in nature's image or in nature's guidelines or in nature's example. People is talking about biomimetics or biomimicry, and we are becoming again fascinated by the idea of something rooted in our reality that is based on physical, chemical, biological laws which are ruling the world. And that's true. That's true that nature has all these components, but culture does a huge contribution to the interpretation of nature. Languages refers to nature and the components of nature in very different ways. Science itself is a way to construct relations or to acknowledge different kinds of relations between living organisms and their environment. We create narratives about nature that cannot be fixed. So we need to understand that this process of creating diversity is in itself a process of innovation. And it's through innovation in the sense that everything that is appearing in the world is new, is brand new. Perhaps not species, perhaps not animals and plants, but we have orchids such as this one, which is a domesticated form of a Thailandese plant that is now with us in Colombia, even if we are the country of biodiversity and the richest country on orchids in the world. But we don't have a species of orchid that is capable to live inside buildings for 3-4 months, 2 years, 3 years, and stay in flower for such a period of time. We have invented this orchid, so we cannot say that this orchid is unnatural, but also we cannot say that it's just a cultural invention. So innovation has thresholds, innovation has standards, innovation has options, and that's why we need to think in the mixing of biological identities and cultural reference to those identities in a continuous feedback that explains and creates and brings us new opportunities. And to me, this is quite important at this point of history because we are almost on the verge of becoming religious again in relation to nature. And it is not bad to revere life. It's not bad to consider the sacredness of the planet's health. But if we create a fixed idea or a fixed identity of nature, we are risking our capacity to adapt. So I ask you, what do you think is nature? What do you think are the limits of transforming nature? And then, more complicated, is how do you consider yourself as being part of nature, but not part just in flesh and bones, but also in terms of your feelings or emotions and your ideas? Because ideas in humanity are natural. Therefore, we can think naturally and still create technology and still do lots of things that for many people are not anymore part of nature. So the boundary between nature and culture is being blurred, and it's a very interesting place for being in history. And we are inventing our bodies in this new way of seeing the organic condition of nature. And here is where the idea of cyborg appears, but also the idea of hybridation between cultures, between humans, between languages. It's all the sense of continuous experimentation of concepts, of ways of doing things, of producing sense in our world. Remember, we all started living in Africa, and 300,000 years ago we moved from the old continent and colonized the rest of the world. And in every place we faced different challenges for our survival, and our brain started to evolve in synergy and symbiosis with the environment that our bodies has to face in the Arctic, in the Mediterranean, in the southeast of Asia, and crossing the Bering Strait to the Americas and reaching the South Pole through Chile and Argentina. So diversity is natural, but also the origin of culture was developed by this conversation with the environment, and our brains and ideas of ourselves are changing all the time. At some point, reinvention of nature has helped us to survive, but we also have destroyed that nature. We are living on a much less diversity than our ancestors, so we are losing options and rapidly losing them to adapt for an uncertain future. Perhaps the task of humanity during the next generations is just to recover diversity, to regenerate the capacities of this nature for producing diversity, and to pay a bit of our debt in front of nature. We need to acknowledge that all we have comes from the rest of the creation or evolution, how you prefer to call it, and that we are putting ourselves in trouble by losing diversities of every kind. Reinvention of nature also is teaching and helping us to create new technology, and we rely lots on technology to solve our daily problems. We are becoming billions of people in the planet, and we cannot just stop doing things from one day to the next. So what I would like to emphasize is this idea of reinventing nature with having in mind the creation of diversity and its relation to technology. And our role here is more the role of the artist, because we are not thinking on creating this new nature, recovering natures just by the guidelines of efficiency or utilitarianism. We are thinking on creating nature because it creates sense of existence, because we are part of this nature. So we have a duty to protect and to care for nature, and also to create this relation from nature and technology and culture with the eyes of an artist. That means lots of innovation, lots of creativity, lots of music, lots of plastic arts, lots of performance, and lots of free conversation with the rest of the world. We have a cultural mindset that allows us to give rights to nature if we wish, to become more humble in our relations to the rest of the species or the places. We can challenge the views of other cultures kindly and saying you are not understanding what's happening with nature. And again, this is the case of Colombia and the mega diverse countries. There's many, many other countries, but not all of the countries that harbor a handful of the species of the world. And this richness has to be protected for the future of the whole humanity. So respect and creativity go hand to hand, and we need to acknowledge that diversity is placed in particular portions of the earth, and those stewards that live in those portions also are doing their job in the name of the whole humanity. And here we are talking about another kind of environmental justice, which is ecological justice. There's people that has to take care of biodiversity while others can afford to transform their countries or their regions for mining, for industry, for urban developing, without affecting too much or a big chunk of the world's biodiversity. And here I want to finish with a call for the protection of the Amazon and the world's remaining rainforests. Because what we face here is a breaking point for humanity, where if we are not able to protect the rainforest, we are just saying that we are not able to protect ourselves, that we are not learning, we have not learned anything from our previous experience of thousands of years, and we think that we can live in a world of minerals and polluted water, perhaps a bit of plastic, but without organic matter, which is a story, a fake story that sometimes is running around. So I thank you very much for staying with me in this conversation about diversity, about adaptation to the changing world, about becoming different to not just to survive, but to thrive, to enjoy this next phase of humanity in the mirror of a planet which is being regenerated by ourselves, and with a new orientation to our technologies and institutions based on our capacity of creating art, of doing art. The world is drifting towards a strange place, and we know that we have to pay a price to inhabit it in the conditions that we have created. We still don't know which is the price. Perhaps the cyborg culture, or a different perspective of integration between the organic and technological. But we have to figure out in the next years how to produce more diversity, how to assemble these new worlds with justice and equity, and of course, with sustainability. Thank you very much.